My wife's long affair with my friend came to an end when I caught her red-handed and exposed everything by printing their secret messages. My wife, 26, called her Mia, and it turned out that she had cheated on me with a friend of mine, 27, who I'll call Jack. To give you some background, we met when I was 22 at another friend's wedding. She was a good friend of the bride, and I was the groom. They sat us at that table, so when I first saw her, I was blown away by how gorgeous she was. We hit it off right away. We chatted for a while, had dinner, and hit the dance floor. We danced and drank all night. We ended up kissing on the dance floor, and when we pulled away, our friends, the bride and groom, came up to us and asked what was going on between us. They were really interested. We were excited to play matchmaker, but we just shrugged it off and carried on with our night. We left not exchanging numbers, but about a week later, I got a text from her asking me out. The bride gave her my number, and of course I said yes. Turned into a relationship. It was great overall, with only a few minor arguments. Nothing serious ever came of it. I eventually asked her to marry me about 2 years into our dating. We were married less than a year later. Just before our first anniversary, things came to a head. She was becoming more guarded about her phone, going out more often, and our relationship was suffering. I tried to bring this up on several occasions, but she brushed me off, saying I was letting my insecurities get the better of me. She continued to act as if my feelings and attempts to communicate didn't matter to her, so she became increasingly distant. I stopped giving her a goodbye kiss as I left for work. One night while she slept, I took her phone and laptop and skimmed through her texts, emails, and messenger apps, but I didn't find anything. I also checked her car and found a second phone. I knew what was going on, but I wanted all the evidence for when I confronted her. I didn't want her to downplay it or make it seem like it was a one-time thing. I looked through the phone and found only one number. I read through every message and connected the phone to my computer to print out every message and every photo. I spent the night researching divorce lawyers. I spent hours of my day in my at-home office reading bios of lawyers and found one that I liked. I emailed him, but as it was a Saturday, he wasn't in the office. Then I wanted to know who the guy was. I grabbed my phone, typed the number I wanted to call, and pretended I was Spectrum. I mean, who doesn't have Spectrum? Jack's contact popped up, and it took me a minute to put 2 and 2 together. When I did, I blew up. I was yelling and cursing in my office, and my wife opened the door to check on me. When she saw me, I told her to get out. She closed the door and went to our room. I'd never cursed at her before. I was so mad all day. I left my office and just started raging silently, glaring at the wall. I called one of my friends from the wedding and asked if he wanted to go for a drink. He must have heard something in my voice because he asked if I was okay. I told him I wasn't and that I really needed to drink. So I took all the printouts and left without saying anything. I went to the bar. I got there first and ordered 4 shots of Jack and a beer. I was on my last shot when my friend called Ted. He arrived and asked what was going on. I told him straight out that Mia was cheating. He gave me sympathy, and I asked if he wanted to know who with. I told him it was Jack. He became visibly irritated. He was the one that introduced me to Jack, and all he could say was, "I'm sorry." Over and over, Jack and I were never super close. We didn't ask each other to hang out, but we were friendly if we saw each other at a get-together. I told Ted not to mention it to anyone because I had just found out and I hadn't even spoken to Mia or a lawyer yet. I asked him not to tell his wife, and if she asked what was wrong with me, to say I'm having problems at work. He agreed. We drank and talked for most of the night. Then I called an Uber and went home around 3. At 1 a.m., I checked my phone and saw a bunch of missed calls and texts from Mia. She asked where I was and if I was okay. I got home and found her asleep on the couch. I just went to bed and woke up with her in the bed. I got dressed and left the house. I went to pick up my car and I went to work and got caught up in my tasks for the day. I left at 10 p.m. to go pick up my car and go home. My wife was there to greet me. She told me she had made me dinner. She asked if I wanted her to heat it up. I told her no and went to bed. She followed soon after, asking what was wrong with me. I told her to leave me alone and that I wanted to sleep. She kept pestering me. Eventually, I snapped and yelled at her to stop. I went to sleep. The next morning, I got an email from the lawyer asking to meet later in the day, so I confirmed and got ready for my day. I went downstairs to leave and saw that Mia had made breakfast and was waiting for me to talk. I made a small plate and sat down. She started by saying I've been acting different and going on and on about how I changed. She wants to know why. I told her work has been stressful and that it'll all be over soon. I finished up and told her I had to go. I went to my office and counted down the minutes until I met with the lawyer. When I left, I told my assistant I was going out to lunch with a client. My wife would sometimes call my work, and I left the meeting with the lawyer. It went well, and I handed over everything I had gathered on her. The lawyer told me, "I'm sorry for all that's going on, but I'm happy you gathered all this information. We live in an at-fault state after all. So, your wife doesn't have a claim on most of your money." I told him I hadn't even thought about that. I was just thinking I've got to divorce her as soon as possible. He asked to keep the evidence, but I told him I'd prefer you to just make copies. I haven't told my wife I knew yet, and I don't want to hear her excuses. He agreed and had his assistant make copies. I asked when she'll be served with papers. He told me about. I thanked him and left. I went home to confront my wife, but she wasn't there. I called her, but she didn't answer. I called again, but she didn't answer. I texted her, "I don't care if you're riding Jack right now. Get home. We need to talk." She called me not a minute later, asking what I was talking about. I told her, "Get home now." She arrived about 15 minutes later, and I said, "Wow, look." In the 15 minutes that passed, she realized that the distance between here and Jacksonville was about the same. She looked at me, dumbfounded. I gave her a minute to gather herself, but she just kept looking at me. I said, "Well, there's nothing to say." She tried to deny it and tried to make me doubt what I saw. I let her continue, and she started insulting me. I slammed my fist on the table to shut her up and pulled out the evidence, showing it from the side. I showed her each printout, and she told me to stop and started to cry. She apologized and said she loved me. I said, "Honey, what happened to the energy you had before you were so adamant on degrading and insulting me?" She tried to hang me up and tell me how sorry she is. I put my hand out and told her, "Don't touch me. We'll go to the bedroom and do whatever I like." I looked her in the eye and told her, "Sweetheart, I will never touch you again. Do you want to know who else has these photos and messages? My lawyer. I'm divorcing you now. Get a bag, gather your clothes, and get out of my house." That was 3 days ago, and I haven't heard from her. I'm sorry this is so long, and I apologize for any spelling errors. I'm curious to know from those who have been through this what I can expect from here. Thanks for reading. Update 1. After I posted the first part of this, you all gave me a ton of advice, so I followed most of it. This morning, I planned on doing a bit of damage control, so I scheduled an appointment with my doctor to get checked for STDs. I have that appointment in 2 days. Next, I started contacting all the people close to me, including my father. I also reached out to a few friends who were really supportive. They offered their advice and asked if I needed help with anything. However, I decided to decline as I had already made up my mind. I then contacted her family. I sent a text to her mom and dad, thanking them for allowing me into their family and telling them that I was grateful for all that they had done for me. However, I informed them that Mia and I are getting divorced and that I would miss them terribly. They were very suffocating, and while they are great people, I am happy I don't have to deal with it anymore. I told them if they had any questions, they could ask. I didn't hear back from them for a while, so I moved on to Mia's sister. I felt bad because her sister and I were good friends, and I knew this would mess up that friendship. I texted her, "Hey, I'm sorry to have to text you this, but Mia and I are getting a divorce, and I wanted you to know I want to. From day one, you were great about accepting me as a brother. I'll be around if you ever need anything." Her parents responded right away. I'll give you the gist of the conversation. Parents were really sorry to hear this. What happened? Why hasn't Mia said anything to us? Mia has been in at least a year-long affair. I think it started before our wedding. I'm not sure why she hasn't reached out, but I think you should call her. She left. I figured she would have gone to you and your wife. We haven't heard from her. We'll call her. Thanks for letting us know. Are you sure she was having an affair? I am positive. I found their texts. Parents were so sorry that she did that. We'll try and get in touch with her after dealing with her family. I moved on to Jack's fiancé. I can't remember if I told you all that he is engaged. I know it. I saw some comments that made me think this was going to be tricky. I figured Mia and Jack would have hatched a plan. But either she didn't tell them or they're not that bright. I texted her around 2 p.m. and asked if we could meet for coffee at 2:05. She said yes and told me to meet her at a hipster coffee shop across from her office at 2:30. I got there first, ordered my awful coffee, and waited for a few minutes. She came in, ordered hers, and came over to join me. I told her, "There's no easy way to say this, so I'm just going to come out and say it. Jack has been cheating on you with my wife. It's been going on for over a year." She was obviously shocked, so I told her, "I only found out a few days ago. I know I should have told you then, but I had to start the divorce proceedings to deal with my own issues." She asked how I found out, so I told her everything that's in the first post. Then I asked if she wanted to see the evidence I gathered. I pulled out a binder and she grabbed it. She skimmed through the messages and pictures and just started to silently cry. I told her she's more than welcome to take the binder and extra copies if she wanted to confront Jack with it or use it to see if she thanked me. Stood up, took the binder, and left. She looked defeated. I know you all told me to just stay sober, keep a level head, and so on, but my world just came crashing down on my head. I'm going to take this week to sit on my back porch, drink, smoke cigars, and blare music. After this week, I'll stop feeling sorry for myself and get back to normal. On a more positive note, I've already packed up most of her things, including clothes, jewelry, and so on. I also threw in our wedding book and every photo that has her in it. If and when she comes back for her stuff, I don't want her here any longer than she needs to be. Before you ask, I didn't ruin her clothes. Other than a few picture frames, nothing's broken. There's nothing else happening right now. I told everyone I wanted to let you know that I have a doctor's appointment scheduled and my lawyer is working hard to get me out of this situation. So far, 90% of her things are in boxes. I'm not sure what's left if she stays out of my hair, but I'm optimistic that this might be the smoothest divorce ever. Thank you for reading, and I appreciate any advice you may have. Update 2. I apologize for being MIA for a while and not responding to comments and messages. I've been caught up in the process and haven't had a chance to check in. I've caught up on everything since the last update, so I've been enjoying a few drinks to celebrate. I'd say this is my first semi-sober moment since I found out about everything, and I'm still trying to process everything that's happened. I guess numb is an accurate word. In the last update, I told you all that I'd notified everyone, and the only one that didn't respond was me, a sister who I was very close to. Well, that night I wrote after posting my update. I kept drinking and ended up passed out on my back patio with a bottle and a few beer cans surrounding me. When I woke up, I smelled breakfast being cooked. My first thought was, oh no, Mia came back and thinks that breakfast was going to make up for what she's done. I got really angry and threw myself out of the chair, ready for a screaming match. But to my surprise, it was my sister. I stood there for a moment. I was trying to calm myself down, but when Emma saw I was awake, she came over and gave me a hug. She didn't say anything. She just led me to the table and put a plate in front of me as I ate. She told me how sorry she was and that when her sister showed up at her house and said we'd be fine in a few days, then told me that when I texted her that when they were divorcing, she asked Mia if it would be okay with her why he was divorcing her. Apparently, Mia just broke down and told Emma everything. I rolled my eyes and said there's no way she told her everything. I told her what happened. Emma said that Mia had said it was a one-time thing and that I was making a big deal out of it. I told her that I don't intend to get back together with Mia. If that's why she's here, she's wasting her time. If she's in contact with Mia, Emma needs to tell her to find a lawyer. She laughed and said she wasn't here for her sister. She was here for me. She told me that of course she'd be there for my sister, but that she and I are friends and she wouldn't abandon me, especially when I didn't do anything wrong. I stood up and went to her side of the table and just hugged her. I was so worried that all this would ruin our friendship. If she knew what I was going through, it would ruin our friendship. Hearing her say that made me feel so much better. Emma stayed with me for 2 days in the guest bedroom and left this morning as I am preparing to leave for my cabin. I had it before the marriage. Mia can't touch it. I was gathering my hunting and fishing equipment. She asked if she could join me, but I told her that as much as I would like that, she should probably go check in on her sister. She agreed, hugged me, and left. I'm grateful to Emma for being there for me. Before anyone says she's into me, she's not. She's also 20, which is way too young for me. It's just a great friendship. I almost forgot to mention that I went to the doctor, got tested, and the results should be in on Monday. I've reached out to Jack's fiancée a few times just to check on her. She says she's fine and doesn't know what I told her, that if she wants to meet anytime next week, I'm happy to listen. Thanks for reading, for reaching out, and for all the praise. You've all been a great support to me. If any of you are going through this, my advice is to keep your head down, focus on what you really want, and set goals. In my case, I first consulted a lawyer, then a doctor, and informed everyone close to me. I also kept it off the internet. I set aside time to process my feelings. Thank you again for your support. I apologize for the length of these updates. In my last post, I told you about Emma coming to my house and staying for a few days. She left when I was leaving to go hunting at my cabin. I have good news. I got a buck, a nice 8-pointer. I got him on my first day out there, which I'm very happy about. I spent the rest of my time at the cabin fishing. I only caught 2, but they were a decent size, so I made one my dinner and butchered the other. I spent the rest of my stay cleaning my deer and enjoying the views. Other than a drink or 2 a day, I spent my trip sober, as I promised. I'm now all clean, as my doctor told me. It was a bit of a shock, given that we hadn't had much passion in the bedroom for a few months. But you can never be too sure. I reached out to Jack's fiancée, but didn't hear back for some time. She eventually responded, telling me she's staying with her family for now. She didn't really go into detail, but her staying with her family probably means things aren't going well. At least she's with family. I told her I'd do anything I could to help. She asked me to meet for coffee the next day, which I agreed to. We met at the same hipster coffee shop and talked for about 2 hours. We talked about everything that happened with Mia. She wanted to know what steps I was taking and if I was divorcing or if there was any chance I would reconcile. I told her that, in my opinion, cheating is a deal breaker. It's a lack of self-respect and consideration that I can't accept. I asked her what her plan was. She said she was confused about everything. She felt like everything she thought was true turned out to be a lie. She wasn't sure what her next move should be. Should she move on or forgive him? I told her that if you could forgive someone for cheating on you for that amount of time, you're a better person than I am. She said her family was telling her to forgive him and move on. I told her I was going to be blunt with her. Just because your family wants you to forgive and move on doesn't mean you should. I went on to say that Jack obviously doesn't care about marriage and what it all means. He cheated on you, his fiancée, with my wife. For that amount of time, she's a better person than me. She told me all of her family was telling her that she should forgive him and move on to get married. I told her I was going to be blunt with her and went on to say that just because it's what your family wants doesn't mean you need to follow along. Then I said, Jack obviously doesn't care about marriage and what it all means. He cheated on you, his fiancée, with my wife. I told her he wasn't marriage material. I said she needed to do what she thought was right and not let anyone else make decisions that would affect her life. I told her that when I found out, I tried to think of ways my heart could trick my brain into accepting it and forgiving her, but I just couldn't do it. I also said I only talked to one person, but I'd already made my decision, and no one could change my mind. I bet when you went to stay with your family you had a pretty good idea of what you were going to do, but you let many people in, and they all gave their own take on it. I finished by telling her all she needed to do was follow her gut. Her brain and heart will always lie to her, but if her gut feels something's off 9 out of 10 times, her gut is probably right. She thanked me and we left each other. I went home the following day and got a message from my lawyer. He told me that Mia had been served at work. I thanked him for all his hard work, especially given the short time frame. Not long after that, Emma called to tell me that Mia hadn't left her room all day and was sobbing in bed. I told her that she had been served and was probably realizing how badly she messed up. Emma asked me how the cabin was and if I got anything. I told her everything. I did, and I told her how my time was there. We chatted for a bit and then I hung up. I'd prepared myself and my house for my wife's explosion. I figured if there was any time she would, it would be soon, now that she's been served. So now I'm waiting patiently, biting my tongue. I have Advil on standby for what I can only assume is going to be a bad ache. I told my friend, and he agreed that if Mia showed up, he would race over to B. I'm writing this as a witness just in case. I'm waiting for Hurricane Mia to tear through my house. If or when she does, I'll send out another update. Thanks for reading. Update 4. About an hour after I posted last, I was waiting for Mia to show up at the house and go ballistic. I had no real reason. She would do anything, but given everything that's happened, I never really knew the woman. I went around to all the cameras that I checked all the cameras inside and outside and made sure they were working. I called my friend and told him that Mia had been served and that if she showed up, he needed to get to my house as soon as possible. I wasn't going to jail because of this woman. As it turned out, I was right because Mia had shown up at the house and was banging on the door and screaming to let her in. I immediately called my friend and Emma to come get here because Mia was beating down my door. She was cursing my name, begging me to let her in, calling me every name in the book, and saying how I could be so heartless. She was right, because the entire time she was screaming and banging on the door, all I could do was laugh. Then I wondered why she didn't just walk away. She still had keys as far as I knew. When my friend showed up, she was still screaming and cursing, so he started to record on his phone and stayed in his truck. But this guy brought his wife with him. Mia's friend went out to calm her down. She walked up to Mia, put her arms around her, and tried to get her to talk to her. Mia slapped her across the face and screamed at her to mind her own business. That made my friend, who has a video of it, call the police. She kept screaming and cursing until the police got there. When they did, she tried so hard to play the victim. 2 officers approached her, and she began to cry, stating that I had hit her and thrown her out of the house. My friend and his wife had informed the other officer that when they arrived at the house, she was yelling and banging on the door, making it difficult for them to confirm whether I had done what Mia said I had done. After the officer finished speaking with my friend and his wife, he came to my door. When I opened it, Mia was there. He hit me. I want him arrested. He started to put me in cuffs when I told him I can prove that she's lying. I need my phone. The officer stopped and told me to show him the view from the outside cameras. After reviewing the video, he apologized for jumping to conclusions and automatically assuming I was the one in the wrong. I told him I didn't fault him, but he then told me that they received 15 calls from my neighbors. The neighbors called the police because they heard Mia screaming that he hit her. The officers had to deal with the situation for about half an hour before making their judgment. Mia was put in cuffs and charged with disturbing the peace, public intoxication, and a DUI. As the police took me into the car, Emma showed up and asked what had happened. I showed her the video on my phone of it all. The officer then came up to me to hand me. Emma started asking about the case number and other paperwork. I told her I'd go back inside. She followed soon after and sat next to me. She said she'd left for 10 minutes to run to the store. When she got back, Mia was no longer in the living room, so she thought Mia had gone to bed after drinking too much wine. Emma and I talked for a while. She asked if she could stay the night. I said she was welcome anytime. She told me that Mia had to spend the night in jail. I don't know why, but they could bail her out in the morning. She said that she called her parents to let them know what was happening and to see if they could bail me out because Emma doesn't have that kind of money. We had a beer together and went to bed. When I woke up in the morning, Emma had already left to meet with her parents. I haven't heard from her since. I haven't heard from Mia, Emma, or their parents, but I don't think it's a good idea to contact them. Update 5. I haven't heard from Mia since that night, but my lawyer was contacted by hers, letting him know he'll be representing Mia. Finally, we can start this process. I also reached out to Jack's fiancée to see if she has any news on her front. We only texted back and forth, but she told me she has kicked him out of her house and had her father and brother pack. She told me her dad and brother wanted to beat him up, but she asked them not to. She said she just wants to put all this behind her and move on. She thanked me for checking on her and told me her close friends are there for her when she needs them. I sent her the link to my Reddit page so she can see all the support you all give to me and to her. On Friday, the moment I got off work, I rushed home. My plan was to go back to my cabin for the weekend. When I arrived, Emo was in my driveway. She wanted to grab her sister's things and had a list of what my wife expected. I quickly skimmed through it and saw that all but one thing was already in a box or sitting in my garage waiting to be picked up. I told her I'm not transporting or touching anything that's in here. I'm not going to be responsible if Mia wants to claim it. I picked up her stuff and told her I'd pay for a moving company to pack and take all her things because I'm going to my cabin and don't have time to deal with Mia's stuff. She said that would be great and hopes I have fun. She took a box of Mia's clothes and put it in her car. Then she asked if she could tag along this time. I said sure, why not? You go back home, drop off the box and pack a bag for yourself. By the time I went to the store and packed up the truck, she was pulling up. I locked up my house and took off to the cabin with Emma. The weekend went really well. The last time I was up there, I realized what a gem that place is. It has a beautiful view and is completely secluded, so I don't have to deal with any people. It's a place you can truly breathe. On Monday, I called a moving company. By Tuesday, 3 guys in a big truck showed up and started loading. I had every box open and recorded as they closed the box and picked it up. I took pictures of all the furniture and recorded as the movers loaded it. I thanked them all for tolerating me and tipped them each an extra $50. I then sent all the recordings and pictures to my lawyer and carried on with my day. The house seems empty, but the house is also clean without all her things. When I started this process, my lawyer told me not to get rid of anything that could be considered shared. So I put most of the furniture in a storage unit. I've been sleeping in the guest room since she left. Up until I started writing this post, I've been buying all new furniture. I'll most likely be keeping the majority of it in the garage now that I have the space. I won't be keeping the house. Even if I win it in the divorce, it holds too many bad memories. Thanks for reading. Update 6. It's been a while since I've posted. I coach high school baseball, so between getting this divorce done, dealing with my soon-to-be ex, and coaching these kids, I don't have much free time at the moment. Quite a bit has happened, so this might be a long post. Please bear with me. A few days after the movers took her things to Mia, my lawyer received I got some paperwork saying I damaged her things and demanding I pay her $1,500 or she would be taking me to court over it. My lawyer sent hers, along with all the videos and pictures, asking exactly where the damages were that he claimed I made. He told me that all this does is tell the judge we'll see how attached she is, and it might be a hassle now, but when it's time for court, this will all be perfect evidence. I don't think her lawyer was prepared for how meticulous I am. I've been thinking about how thorough I need to be. I'll need to photograph and document everything. When I found out about my wife's affair, I came across this page. I read all of the horror stories about what these people's former spouses did to them. I absolutely refuse to be another one of those stories. I've prepared for almost every outcome and accusation she could make. I wouldn't put anything past her at this point. Mia had called. She calls me once every other day, but I never pick up if she leaves a voicemail. I don't listen to it. I just send it to my lawyer. He always says, "You are a lawyer's wet dream. You listen to everything I say. You gathered a mountain of evidence on your own." I have yet to have a client do so well. He doesn't exaggerate when he says that. It also puts a smile on my face every time I get that reassurance from him that I'm doing everything the right thing. It just makes me feel a little bit better about this whole situation. About 2 or 3 weeks ago, my lawyer told me that we have enough evidence to settle this outside of court. If it fails, it would look good on us for trying, so we set a date a week ago to meet in a neutral lawyer's office before we met. He told me not to react to anything Mia says, and that we do will be recorded for a judge to read if it goes to court. We arrived in the early morning and went into the office, where we found her lawyer waiting. We walked in and the lawyers greeted each other. Mia and I sat there waiting for what was going to happen. Mia's lawyer started by asking what we had to offer. Mine said, he said that since we had a mountain of evidence of her infidelity and inappropriate behavior, The only thing we could offer was half of the selling price of the home and half of the savings account. That's more than any judge would award you, basically what you came into the marriage with, and then you'll be leaving with it. He looked directly at Mia and said, "If you decide to go to court, I will put every message you've sent me making you read it all out loud. Then I'll put up all the photos for everyone to see." He didn't say that at the time, though. "I'll also bring up your recent charges and play the video taken that night." Mia started to tear up, looking at me, asking if there was anything she could do to make this right. I said, "You've been cheating on me since before our wedding. All I can prove is a few weeks before the wedding, but I expect it was much longer. There's nothing you can do to make me forget or forgive you for what you've done. Sign the papers. It's more than you deserve. I want to be done with this whole thing you created." She cried for 15 minutes. She had to excuse herself to the restroom when she returned. She was still in tears, but she signed the papers and walked out. After that, in about a month, everything will be filed, and I'll just have to sell the house. Thanks for reading and for all of the advice you've given. I don't see anything else happening, but I could be wrong, and if it does, I'll let you know. This will probably be my last post, so thanks again. I hope what's happened to me has helped at least one person out there.